And it was a speech that was heavy on content and variety, as if painted by an artist with an easel and no shortage of colors to choose from. President Uhuru Kenyatta's seventh State of the Nation crisscrossed various sectors, from the Big Four to job creation for the growing demographic of young Kenyans, all the way to proposed constitutional amendments. But in the midst of all that, the president seemingly skirted around the finer details of crucial challenges facing Kenyans who are struggling with a depressed economy, rampant corruption, the rising cost of healthcare compounded by COVID-19, and huge infrastructure projects that drain the public purse before they're completed. And according to a report from the Africa Center for Open Governance titled Highway Robbery, budgeted corruption, graft and large infrastructure projects in Kenya usually walk hand in hand.
Mega infrastructure projects played a prominent role in President Uhuru Kenyatta's State of the Nation address, with the head of state keen to send a strong message that taxpayers' funds were being channeled towards sustainable development projects, from the 1.96 billion shillings Likoni floating bridge in Mombasa County to the 62 billion Nairobi Expressway project, and even Africa's largest public-private partnership funded project, the 160 billion shillings Nairobi Mau Summit Expressway. It is undeniable that the infrastructure landscape in Kenya is set to change dramatically in the coming years.
Milestones thus far, such as Kenya's 80th slot improvement since 2014, with our nation currently ranked at number 56 globally and ranked third in sub-Saharan Africa on the Ease of Doing Business Global Ranking Report.
But as the president painted a rosy picture of the opportunities that this project will provide, the nagging question of debt occasioned by previous infrastructure projects that are yet to break even could not be ignored. Just yesterday, Parliament recommended that the government renegotiates loan terms for the standard gauge railway line with its Chinese lender. Kenya owes the Chinese Exim Bank over 400 billion Kenya shillings, with the Transport Committee querying the sustainability of the railway line, which they recommended should undergo a reduction of operational costs by at least 50%. The president did not wade into the murky waters of Kenya's rising debt, which as of October 2020 zoomed past the 7 trillion mark. In August, the debt stood at 7.1 trillion shillings from a flat 6 trillion shillings at the start of 2020, possibly to unrestrained borrowing following the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. Any further debt compounded with a heavy wage bill and looming civil service pension payouts could lead to a perfect storm for the exchequer.
May I have the permission to carry on talking?
The president spoke on a day when the Africa Center for Open Governance, AFRICOG, released its latest report titled Highway Robbery, Budgeted Corruption. In the document, they quote former Auditor General Edward Ouko, who spoke of a phenomenon referred to as budgeted corruption, through which the budget is inflated by monies that are earmarked to be stolen. Ouko characterized the budgeting process as a highway, and such projects are exit lanes. In the same report, AFRICOG Executive Director Gladwell Otieno went on to say that the runway corruption that has dominated headlines during the Jubilee administration is evidence of budgeted corruption, which is in turn a manifestation of state capture. In his winding speech, President Uhuru Kenyatta surprisingly stayed away from the emotive question of corruption, which has become a routine fixture in many of his previous public appearances, at a time when Kenyans are eagerly awaiting the fate of the Kenya medical supply suspects and suppliers accused of engaging in a 7.6 billion Kenya shilling scheme to defraud the taxpayer. And whilst the Director of Public Prosecutions recently released a report showing a marked improvement in convictions, nevertheless, Kenya still languishes at position 137 out of 180 on the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index report, with Rwanda and Tanzania in the lead. And on a day that 23 Kenyans lost their lives to COVID-19, the president remained hopeful in the war on the coronavirus.
With regard to our national response to COVID-19, Kenyans must remain vigilant, and by so doing, we are capable of defeating this invisible enemy.
But he remained silent on what will be done to ease pressure on the nation's ICU facilities should the pandemic worsen, forcing sick Kenyans to stay at home due to crowded facilities, or end up paying medical bills out of pocket because the National Hospital Insurance Fund does not cover COVID-19 related complications. And as the United States, Europe and Asia scrambles to put vaccine supply deals in place with various companies such as Pfizer Incorporated and Oxford AstraZeneca, Kenyans still remain uncertain of when a vaccine will reach the country's shores and whether the government will prioritize it without donor support.